Didn't see you there. Today, folks, we're doing the martini. Alright, let's get into it. Play the intro. That thing. Welcome back to another Melrose Mixes video. Today we're discussing the almighty, the most famous cocktail in the world, debatably, the martini. So let's talk about it. This is going to be controversial, but let's get into it. Let's do this. What's a classic martini? What I have in my hand is pretty much classic. It's 60 ml gin, 30 ml vermouth, and you can add a couple of dashes of bitters if you like. I love orange bitters. You can play my how to make a martini video just up in that little suggested box up there. That'll show you how to make it. Some people like olives, some people like onions. On a pick, olive brine. Every bartender's cat, dog, and mother. Everyone has their own opinion on what a martini should be. Everyone has their own preferred martini style. It's shaken or stirred, you know? James Bond, he had his own bloody request, didn't he? What was the original martini? Well, the martini as we know now today, clear, beautiful, sexy liquid, wasn't the original. Did I just blow your mind? Yeah, it wasn't the original. The Manhattan was the original martini. The root martini was made with sweet vermouth and whiskey in 1884. And then 4 years later, that's when gin stepped in, was like, hey, what about me? And so, yeah, the Manhattan was before the martini, yet, here's the trick part. The gin martini, or the martini, then became more popularized after the Manhattan. It was like, see you, Manhattan, I'm here and I'm here to stay, and it pretty much has. It's rocked the world. It's been pretty much the rock and roll of cocktails since, you know, the 1880s. It was created, it was here to stay. So that first original martini with gin or vodka, that was published in 1888 and mentioned in Harry Johnsons Bartenders Manual and Theodore Proulx's Bartender's Manual as well. So the Proulx version was quite sweet in the beginning and most likely used sweet vermouth, yet it didn't mention what vermouth was used. And in the Johnson's recipe it uses bitters, curaçao and gum syrup, so again, even sweeter and not too different from the Martinez. So here's the kick here again. So the Martinez, turns out it was actually what led to the martini's name. That's where we lead into where it originated to begin with. Now we could go on about a few different stories if we want, but I'm just gonna cut to the chase. I'm gonna cut to what's actually true and what Robert Simonson's book believes. He's a New York Times cocktail writer. He's written many cocktail books. I have most of them in my collection, and he wrote a whole book dedicated to the martini. And in his opinion, and I think mine's pretty much aligns with his, it most likely evolved, like most cocktails, in bars around the world when gin was booming worldwide, mostly Europe, and vermouth started to be popularized at the same time in the 1880s. So gin and vermouth, two ingredients mixed together, they were popularized at the same time. It makes so much sense. We doubt that one bartender miraculously came up with this. It was most likely that, pretty much. But the martini is also a clubman's drink. What's a clubman? So basically in the 1880s, when the martini was, you know, evolving and thriving, it kind of automatically had this like stylish, sexy, sleek, elite kind of, I guess, look and vibe to it. It's a clear, beautiful looking drink in a sophisticated glass. So basically, naturally, it was an elite cocktail, hence rich, wealthy, suited up men, generally this is what they would order, and the bartenders were like, they'd order their drinks specifically at bars. That all the bartenders wore bow ties and tuxes and all that jazz, and it became this like cultured drink basically, that anyone with a martini in their hand and a suit and tie was automatically sophisticated and elite. So, and that kind of comes in to where James Bond, where we're talking to James Bond, because it's this 1880s, right? So obviously the martini hasn't always been elite just because of James Bond. It came way before that, but James Bond kind of reminded people, I guess, of that sophistication the martini comes with. So in 1956, when all the James Bond novels and films started to come out, the shaken not stirred reference really boomed the martini once again.
Just a drink. A martini, shaken not stirred.
Yeah, let's get into James Bond for a sec. So basically James Bond's shaken not stirred reference, it's come with the good and the bad. The good side of the James Bond shaken not stirred reference has come with repopularizing the martini once again. On the bad end of the scale, basically he turned it into this catchphrase that now everyone, when they go to a bar, wants to order a shaken not stirred martini. Yet it's an awful drink. A shaken martini. Have you ever tried one? Chuck it in the comments below, but I've tried a shaken martini and I can tell you, it's over diluted, it's never chilled enough, and it doesn't have the same beautiful, like oily kind of texture that you'll get, and a silky texture that you'll get from a stirred martini. Do you like your martini dry, wet, or dirty? When you order a martini at a bar, a pretty decent bar, the first thing they'll ask usually is, okay, do you want that with vodka or gin? Next question, okay, would you like that dry, wet, or dirty? And the bartender with all the tattoos and the mustache, he might lean in and be like, and if you ask it for it dirty, he'll be like, so how dirty? And then he might twist his little mustache or something like that. So yeah, what the fuck does that even mean? What does all of that even mean? Okay, let's get into it. First off, a dry martini, to put it as simply as possible, it means more booze and less vermouth. So if you ask for a really dry martini, you might get just like a rinse of vermouth and the rest be gin or vodka, whatever your choice is. If you want it kind of dry, kind of wet, like in between, that's where the standard martini basically sits. So that's 2 parts gin, 1 part vermouth. And then let's move into wet category. So wet is pretty much standard, a 50-50 mix of vermouth and gin. That really became popularized from Sacha Petrowski when he was at Milk and Honey, and he has a recipe that's 45-45, so 45 gin, 45 vermouth, dry vermouth, and that really hit off in like the early 2000s. And then we'll get into dirty, so that's when it kind of gets even more complicated on the scale. So what does dirty mean? Dirty means olive brine, olive juice, pretty much. I have it in for dirty martinis, and here's why. Dirty martini, a lot of the time you're going to get less booze, so you're paying the same amount as the next guy, or next girl, or next person, but getting less booze for the same amount of money. I mean, I think that's just a rip-off, honestly. I guess if you're aware of that, but a lot of people aren't aware of that. So most of the time, a dirty martini it goes from like a dusty, dirty, and then filthy. That's kind of like the range that people kind of talk in. So dusty is literally like a bar spoon of olive brine mixed in. I don't mind a dusty because you're still getting the same amount of booze, but then when you get into dirty and filthy, that's when the amount of booze is reduced, so it fills the little martini glass or coupe, because you don't want it to be any bigger of a glass than it already is because it will warm up too fast. And the whole point of a good martini is a small chilled glass that's gonna remain its chill factor. Okay, so when you want a dirty martini, yeah, usually it's gonna be between 15 to 30 mils of olive brine, and then that's where your gin might reduce to about 45 mils instead of 60. Some people, if they want it like filthy, they might even do like a 50-50 olive brine to gin with like a splash of vermouth, sometimes not even any vermouth. So my recommendation is to always ask the bartender or waiter what their recipe is for a martini. They should tell you what it is. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't. Yeah, just because you want to know what you're paying for, honestly. And if they say, oh, it's going to be a 50-50 mix of olive brine and gin, I'd be like, oh, is it okay if, I just have like a cup of like 2 bar spoons of olive brine, or even just some olive brine on the side, add your own, and still have, what you're paying for, like like the whole experience of a martini. Alright, and so that's dirty martinis. I will mention though, the olive brine martini as a dirty martini wasn't the first. It wasn't the original. It was actually like a pickled onion brine. That was the original dirty martini, because that was like what was available at the time. Now let's talk about terrible martinis. Have you had a bad martini before? Let me know why in the comments below. So have you had a drink martini that's kind of like warm? Have you had one that kind of tastes off? Yeah, alright, let's talk about it. So first off, was it a little off? Yeah, that's probably because they didn't store their vermouth in the fridge, or the vermouth was off. That's the number one thing. I've worked at plenty of bars, I'm not gonna lie to you, that kept their vermouth on the back bar or like next to the coffee machine because they didn't want it be seen. Because they didn't have enough fridge space. I kind of get that, but make room for it. If you're using vermouth on your menu, you need to keep it in the fridge. It will go off within a week max out of the fridge, and up to a month in the fridge. So you want to keep that as fresh as possible. So that's number one, fresh is best. Number two, quality of ice. The golden rule is 30 seconds. That depends on your quality of ice. So a bartender that's kind of got a bit of knowledge but doesn't have the most complex or detailed knowledge about a martini, they might, I'm stirring 30 seconds, it should be fine, doesn't taste the drink, sends it out. And yeah, they're stirring for 30 seconds, but it's small cubed ice, 100% going to be diluted within 30 seconds. If it's small cubed ice, you want to stir it for 10 seconds, taste it, stir it for another 10 seconds, taste it again, and it should be at the sweet spot by 20 seconds if it's small cubed ice. But if you're using big blocks of ice, like 5 centimeter pieces with a few cracked pieces, that's when you can go for 30 seconds, but still do every 10 seconds taste it, because you'll never know. Every time you crack open your ice cubes, or you get it out of the machine or from your like ice molds, it's going to be different every single time, because you might not have filled it to the brim of your ice mold. The machine doesn't pump out the exact same cube of ice each time, and you haven't cracked it the same amount each time, so you want to be tasting as you're going. Just like when you're seasoning food, same shit. So that's number two, the chill factor. So again, this can happen from not diluting it enough, so it hasn't been stirred enough, it hasn't got to that temperature, the cold temperature, due to the quality of ice as well. But then here's the thing, I also don't like ordering martinis at restaurants, particularly if it's table service, because I don't know how long that my martini's been sitting up on that counter for since it's been ready. Bartender may have made a beautiful, crisp dry gin martini, my absolute favourite, But it's been sitting there for 2 to 3 minutes because the waitresses have been busy. They've got other shit to do, right? And then the bartender's still busy. No one's taking my drink. It's been sitting there. Looking at me, I'm looking at it. So that's when the quality of the drink is dramatically declined. And I'm not going to want to drink it. I don't want to drink a lukewarm martini. I'd only order a martini at a well-known, credited bar I've been to many times, I trust, and I'm ordering it at the bar. And they're making it in front of me and I can drink it as soon as they've poured it into my glass and garnished it, and it's right there in front of me, ready to go. Alright, so to wrap things up, guys, the martini is pretty much, as I said, the rock and roll of cocktails. So cheers, guys. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell button. Comment below your martini experiences. And make sure you learn how to make a proper martini, and that's linked right here, guys. So you can just click on that link here to learn how to make my preferred gin martini. Yeah, tell me what you've learned. Comment below anything new you've learned today about the martini, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Ooh.